Yes, so today we will be looking into a passage from First Corinthians 12, and I'm calling it the lessons from the human body. So before we go ahead, I just would like to spend some time in a short quiz. So I would encourage just not the youth, but all the adults sitting here also to uh, put your answers in the chat box, and every answer which you get right will be awarded 1 point. So everyone who's here, can you attempt to put an answer in the chat box? It's going to be simple, right? So once you're ready with your keyboards, the first question: uh, how many teeth does an adult have? A 28, B 30, C 32, and D 34. Okay, right. So Eileen Auntie says 32. Is there anyone else who thinks they have lesser teeth? So yes, okay. That is that is the right answer. Just 1 second, I'll adjust my chat box. So that is the right answer. And moving on to the next question. Next question is, how many bones does an adult have? Wow, Kinjal thinks it's 304D. The admin thinks 206. Minu Auntie thinks 206. Okay, so the doctors are getting it right. It is 206. Yes. So we have 206 bones in our body. Okay. Thank you for participating, guys. Really appreciate it. Going to the question number 3. How many muscles do we have? 240, 570, 700, 900. Any idea? Just give it a wild guess at least. Hmm. Okay. Kinjal says 700. 240, 240. No idea. Okay. So Kinjal has actually got it right. It is C. 700. So we have 700 muscles operating in your body right now. So question 4. On an average, how much hair is there on your head? A 500, B 10,000, C 100,000, and D 500,000. Depends, sensitive question. C, D. Okay, we have people coming close. I mean, it surely depends on the condition, but on an average, it is 100,000. There are 1 lakh hair on your head. Yes. So we are coming to the end of the quiz, but the fifth question is here. In our kidney, how many individual filters do we have? 3 million, 2,20,000, 500,000, 1 million. Okay, Deepo uncle says 3 million. Nikhil says D, 1 million. So the right answer is actually 1 million. And in both the kidneys you have, there are these small units of filtration called glomerules, and they filter your blood. They have 1 million in each kidney. So we are going up. And question 6. How many neurons are there in your whole brain? The neurons are the parts that help you think. Okay, we are getting some answers. Everyone thinks it's B. Okay. Yes, so that's how a neuron looks, and you have currently like 100 billion. Okay, A. Okay. Okay, so we have actually 100 billion neurons in our head. And finally, the last question is this: how many cells do we have in our body? How many cells, individual cells? A 99 billion, 15 trillion, 20 trillion, 24 trillion. Any guesses? Okay, somebody's saying, admin is saying 24 trillion. Okay. Ashwani, thank you. 24 trillion, Ashwani. Okay. Just one more. Anybody guessing? Just wants to guess it one more time? Okay, 15. Congratulations, Mithil. So Mithil is right. Mithil, good one. So we have 15 trillion cells in our body. So yes, that's the end of this quiz. Thank you for participating, everyone. And this quiz wasn't just conducted just for itself. It was for a reason, because the first verse which we are dealing with today, in that Paul, he says that the human body has many parts. And that's what we agree on, that because we just saw how many parts the human body has. But these many parts, we just discussed about the billions and the trillions of parts our individual body has. But these all parts ultimately form up to become one body. And Paul compares this whole thing with the body of Christ. So it might not make sense right now, because Paul is just giving almost an introduction over here. So we'll be dealing with all the verses in sections. So I'll be making jumps. So if it does not make sense right now, it will make sense in the end. So I'd like to ask you a personal question right now. It is that in this church, has culture ever become a barrier for you? That means the language you speak, the place you come from, the family you belong to, has it affected in any way your presence in church? Have members treated you differently? I just wanted to think about it personally. You did not share it. At the same time, has your finance or the income or the job that you hold, has it become a barrier for you in your church? And it can be in any church you have been to throughout the globe, not necessarily this one. So the first question is about the culture, and the second question is about finance and job. So do you remember any experiences of it affecting your time in church? So probably it wouldn't have. In my own experience, it hasn't affected me. But if it has to you, you are not alone. Whichever church, whichever place you belong to, because when Paul was writing to Corinth, they were going through the same problem. And the problem was this. I'll read the verse 13. It says, some of us are Jews, some of us are Gentiles. Some of us are slaves, and some are free. So what are these tags? Jews, Gentiles. This is about the nation, the locality. Slave and free. Slave and free, in the modern day context, it would be about your economic condition. And Paul is talking that yes, you all identified yourself with labels like Jews, Gentiles, slaves, and free. You all identified yourselves once with it. But now, it goes on to say, but we all have been baptized into one body by one Spirit. So, when we are all baptized into one body. And when we were baptized, these old labels of identity, these old labels that put a tag on us that we belong from this place, or we are so and so, we speak so and so, those were erased and we were given new identities. And a really great part is that we all share the same Spirit. So can you believe all the believers in the world and all of us right now, we actually share the same Spirit within us, though we have different bodies. I'm going to take a jump from this section to another section, and I want to ask you a question. Have you ever compared yourself to anyone in church? Have you ever seen someone who is really good at doing something probably sings really well, probably speaks really well, probably gets along with people really well. And have you compared yourself with that person? And have you said to yourself, they can do it without me. I'm not really needed here. So like you completely think that you are not needed in this place anymore because they can completely do it without you in the church. Now these are personal moments we all may battle with, and I'm no one to speak for you, but I can speak for myself, and I have gone through it. So when I was young, in my church in Pune, there used to be skits and dramas during times of festivals. So during this time, all the children used to be gathered, and they used to give us roles to play, dialogues to speak front of a lot of people. And one thing I knew is that I was really bad at this. So when I used to see the people around me, um, and one of them is actually, I hope he is here. One of them is Nikhil. He's here today, and Nikhil was really really good at everything. Like he used to speak well, he used to act well, and I was the exact opposite. Like I couldn't act for my own sake at all. But and that's when like I used to feel a little like inferior. It's like, do I really belong in this place? Though it's not Nikhil's fault, it's not his fault of being good at it, or being excellent at it. But I felt like, did I really belong in this place? So that's when Paul actually tells the Corinthians that if the foot says, I'm not a part of the body because I'm not a hand, that does not make it any less part of the body. So I'll just say it again. So if the foot tells the hand, if the foot tells that I am not a part of the body because I am not a hand, that does not make it less part of the body. In other words, if you look at the hand, it's beautiful, it has long fingers, it's covered with rings, and it can go high above the head. Okay, that's the hand. But if you look at the feet, on the other hand, the feet is like the lowest part of the body. It touches the ground, it's covered with dirt occasionally, and instead of rings, it's covered with socks and shoes. So it's natural for the foot to think like that about the hand. And similarly, Paul continues this analogy and explains about the ear also. And if the ear says, I am not part of the body because I'm not an eye, would that make it any less part of the body? So again, you just look at the eye. The eye is transparent, the eye is expressive, it comes in different colors, it has eyelashes on it. But when you look at the ear, one second. Yeah. When you look at the ear, does it compare anything to the eyes? It is oftentimes filled with wax. It's not a beautiful part you display and walk around with. And you use earbuds to clean it. So Paul is using this metaphor of one part being sad about who it is and comparing itself to a better part. And Paul says that if the whole body were an eye, how would it hear? So if you think that this person is, you want to be this person, if you want to be something who you are not, then who would do your part? Like who would do the part of hearing? And Paul continues and says, or if the whole body were a ear, how would you smell anything? So yes, the lesson from this is that Paul reminds those who feel their contribution to the body is worthless or unimportant, that they do not thereby stop being a part of the body. So if you ever felt right now, few days back, or long ago, that your contribution to the church is comparatively lesser, it's worthless, or it's unimportant, Paul is making a clear statement to both the Corinthians and to us that we do not stop being a part of the body just because of our contribution. One second. Sorry for that. So I just want you to think about one thing. Out of the many churches that are around you, God has planted you here in NLF. And have you ever thought about the importance of that? Have you ever thought about why were you planted specifically here? And verse 18 actually goes on to speak about that same point. It says, "But our bodies have many parts, and God has put each part just where He wants it." So when we say about each part, if you look at the image there, God has placed every single part. He has not missed it. He has not made an accident. He has placed it with an intention in the place just where He wants it. Just where He wants it. If you see how the flow of the organs are going on right now over there, it's all properly fit tightly among each other, and it's all placed there with a purpose. And so is the same with you. So the consequence of this is that the hand can take no pride in being a hand, and the foot can take no shame. It does not have to take shame in being a foot. Why? Because each serves the purpose of the designer, and each serves the pleasure of God. As Richie was saying in the worship, he was mentioning about how we are so different, but even in our differences, the thing that unites us is God, and that all that we do and all that our focus is on worshiping Him. Yes. So another question for introspection is that, have you ever felt on the other extreme that someone is not needed in the church, or someone does not really fit in? And it can be in a really small way also. Perhaps the person is annoying. Perhaps the person does not sing in pitch or is out of tune. Perhaps a person has told you something that you did not like, and you felt like this person does not belong here, and you kind of excluded that person outside the church. On this topic, Paul says, using the example of the body, that the eye can never say to the hand that I don't need you. I repeat, the eye can never say to the hand, I don't need you. The eye is on the top, it's beautiful, and it compares itself to the hand, and it thinks that it's more important than the hand, and it's like, I don't need you for functioning properly. And the head can't say to the feet, I don't need you. The head being the top and the feet being the lowest, the head cannot. Paul is saying that never, it cannot say that I don't need you. And we all have gone through this in our personal lives, because if you look back and think about any body part which you probably didn't think it's that important, or you considered it less important, and suddenly that body part gets hurt. Let's say it's your hand or your leg, or it's an headache. You don't consider it or give it that much importance, but suddenly it starts paining, and then it throws your body totally out of gear. That one part affects all the other parts. So in the body, if any organ ceases to function, the whole body is thrown out of gear. So what does that mean? So if If the church is the body, if one person is affected, indirectly the others are affected with it too. That's what Paul is trying to say. The whole body is thrown out of gear. So another question, just if you can put it in text, which among the five fingers do you think is the weakest on any natural given day? Which do you think is the weakest? Most of y'all would go with this little, it's called the little finger, and the other name is the pinky. It almost sounds like a little girl. So, and in it already sounds so little, but actually research shows that almost half, 30 to 40% of the strength of your full hand comes from your little finger, the way the muscles are arranged. So that's what Paul is trying to explain in the next verse, which is verse 22. In fact, some parts of the body that seem weakest and least important are actually the most necessary. The parts that we see, that we think, and that seem to us weak, they are actually the most necessary. Now let's take this example and put it to the church. Let's put it back to reality. What do you think are the most important roles in a church? What do you think take the top priority, take the top place of importance in the church? What about arranging chairs, preparing the slides for worship, clearing the stage and packing everything once it's done? What about ensuring that the bathrooms are clean? What about consolidating prayer points in the night when everyone's asleep? What about taking the step to welcome a newcomer? While we may think that, of course, worship leading, preaching, and activities that actually, are in the public, are visible, we might think that these are the most important activities. But Paul is saying that the activities that are unseen, that go behind the curtain, are actually the most necessary for the church to function. So moving on. So continuing from verse 22 to 23, we see that, and the parts that we regard as less honorable. So Paul is talking about parts that seem less honorable. What are these parts? What does it mean? What part of the body is less honorable? I mean, we don't use this in our regular language, so it only means the parts of the body that we can't present, the parts that we choose to clothe, the unpresentable parts. So the parts that we regard as less honorable are those we clothe with greatest care. So these are the parts that we clothe with greatest care. So Paul is trying to make a point here to the Corinth church. And he's also saying that we not only clothe them, we also try and protect those parts that should not be seen. So what Paul is actually saying here is about a problem that was going on in the Corinth church. And the problem was that the elite Christians, the Christians who were wealthy and powerful, used to look down upon the Christians who were poor and needy. And this created a divide in the church. So that's why Paul is saying that the people who are less honorable, you need to clothe. You need to clothe them with care. While the more honorable parts, the parts that we see, the parts that are exposed, they do not require this special care. So God has put the body together such that extra honor and care are given to those parts that have less dignity. Paul indirectly is encouraging and urging the Corinth church to give extra care and honor to the poor and needy because they don't get it. So, how will this knowledge of you being connected to the believers, of you being important in the church, how will this knowledge, how will this knowledge change the way you see a fellow believer, any believer for that matter? Will this knowledge change the way you see a believer? So Paul says, with all the knowledge that I have given you, which all the knowledge that I have shared in the previous verses, the consequence is that this makes for harmony among the members. This makes for harmony among the members. And because we are so dependent on each other, so interdependent on each other, all the members need to care for each other. So, knowing the principle of interdependency, the only response from our side is to be caring, to be careful about how we treat the other. So, in conclusion, in closing of what Paul is talking about to the Corinthian church, Paul says that if one part suffers, all the parts suffer with it. That means if something happens, let's say, to one person among y'all, indirectly all the people are affected from it in the church. And rather than being insensitive about it, we are called to suffer with the person who is suffering. And on the other hand, if one part is honored, is applauded, is rewarded, all the parts should be glad with it. So this also means that when one person suffers, we should not be, happy about that person suffering. And when one part is happy, when one part is honored, we should not be the person to, be sad about it. We are called to suffer with everyone and also rejoice with everyone. Yes, so the last verse actually is a very power-packed phrase, which we discussed in the first verse, verse 12. It says, "All of you together, all of us, are Christ's body, and each of you is a part of it." Now, the phrase Christ's body is a phrase that we have been hearing over a lot of time. But what does it really mean to be the body of Christ? What it means to be the body of Christ is this, and why it is important is because Christ rose from the dead. Christ rose from his body, and presently he is no longer in the world in the bodily form. So if Christ wants to do anything in this world, he has to do it through us. His Spirit has to do it through us. And that is why we are called the body of Christ. Now, if you connect all the things discussed before this, we all form the body of Christ, and we are all dependent on each other. If one part suffers, every part suffers with it. A few lines I want to read about the same topic, and it's almost a poem. So, he has no hands but our hands to do the work today. He has no feet but our feet to lead people in his way. He has no voice but our voice to tell people how he died. He has no help but our help to lead them to his side. So, the lessons from the human body are directly, it's directly compared to the church, and we the church are a small part of the larger body of Christ. And I know in this photo everyone is not here, but there are many more to be still there in this photo. But that's the body of Christ, that's the church. And if I could give a small recap or a summary of all the points discussed, it would be these three lessons. One is that you are essential in the body of Christ, and that no one can tell you that you don't matter and you are not part of the body. The second lesson is that you are dependent on other members. You are dependent on other members. And the third lesson is that you are placed by God exactly where He wants you to be placed. And your position, your role in the church is not an accident. So that was the lessons from the human body. Thank you, and I hope you were blessed by at least one point.